Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our honored guests, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, accompanied by Senator Roy Blunt, Leader Kevin McCarthy, Leader Chuck Schumer, Senator Deb Fischer, Representative Jeff Fortenberry, and Governor Pete Ricketts. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Capitol on this happy occasion. As Speaker of the House, it is my privilege to welcome distinguished leaders of the Congress and honored guests from the state of Nebraska to the U.S. Capitol on this historic day. Let us warmly welcome Chairman Larry Wright Jr., Steve Larrabee Sr., Steve Larrabee Jr., and members of the Ponca tribe of Nebraska. We are deeply honored by your presence. On behalf of the House, I thank the many leaders whose relentless efforts have ensured that Chief Standing Bear has taken his rightful place in the Capitol and in our history books. Yes, you may sit down. Well, why don't we then just have our opening ceremonies, and we'll have some conversation about Chief Standing Bear later, please. We have first.
Please rise for the presentation of the colors of the United States and the Ponca tribe, the singing of our national anthem, and the retiring of the colors.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets with glee, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as Larry Wright Jr., Chairman of the Ponca tribe of Nebraska, delivers the invocation.
Aho Ponca Moshe, Mongide, Omba wiki go, they know hikte, wiblahon. Say hello to all of my Poncas that are here today. Thank you for allowing me to be here and speak before you today. With that, I ask for your forgiveness, my elders that are here speaking before them. I'm going to pray in our Ponca language, and I ask that you bow your heads and you pray as you wish. Wakanda, denanda han udani. Omba de wadaik te esti wibla han shidade. Shi de go wongi de agati te wibla han shidade. Ponkanga de bluga the on wagila ga. Nyonshinga ukeli wongi de ekitaha wadomba ga. Nyonshinga wanoshe hili esti daida de komblega. Edea jubakdi agati the on wagila ga. Shege wadingo agate angonda aje udombate aje shona odeki hide iton that day noshinga bluga ige uda awakenable daga idada udake ahigi wadaikte adida hon dego dina the hon udani gatega wibla sheno. Great Spirit, God, it's good to pray to you today. We thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing each of us to be here. I ask that you watch over our Ponca people, watch over all of our tribal nations. All of those that come on behalf, work together. We're all related. We come together to put our differences aside and work for the betterment of all of our people, all of the people on Mother Earth. Watch over our veterans that give an ultimate sacrifice on our behalf. We come before you in a humble way. Have pity on us. Gatega, Wiblahan, Shena. Thank you.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
In 1865, as America emerged from the bitter Civil War, Congress asked each state to send 2 statues of leaders who represented the best of their communities to stand in the Capitol. They understood that during that time of division, our nation must be unified, remembering the words of our founders, e pluribus unum, out of many one. More than 150 years later, Statuary Hall is our pantheon of patriots, where our nation's heroes are memorialized in marble and bronze. As Speaker, it has been my honor working with many of you to ensure that the full story of America is told in these halls. As I said last week during the 400th observance of the first recorded arrival of enslaved Americans to America, if we're going to improve the future, we must acknowledge the past. That is why here in the Capitol, we dedicated statues of Rosa Parks, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass. It's why we ensured that suffragists Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Susan B. Anthony, and again Sojourner Truth would stand alongside Washington and Jefferson in these halls. It is why we've had so many others honored here, so that all who walk through these halls will know their stories and are part of that great American history. That today, our nation takes another step forward in that journey as we honor a man of extraordinary courage, perseverance, and strength, Chief Standing Bear of the Ponca tribe. With this statue, we honor a leader who sought to fulfill a deathbed promise to his son that he, quote, that he might live and die in peace and be buried with his fathers, and forever righted a monumental injustice in our legal system and in our nation. With this statue, we honor all Native peoples who met injustice and intolerance with dignity and determination. And with this statue, we honor our responsibility to respect the spark of divinity that all possess, recalling the immortal words of Chief Standing Bear, now engraved in bronze here. I am a man, The same God made us both. Let this statue be a symbol of our commitment to righting the wrongs of the past and in our ongoing pursuit of a more perfect union with liberty and justice for all. And now let us continue the program. Thank you all. Shortly, we will unveil the statue so that you can see it for most of the program. But next, we'll hear from our special guest. Thank you. Unveil it right now? Okay. Okay, I think that's why the photographers are here. Okay. Is this it now? You get everyone surrounded? Let us thank Chairman Larry Wright Jr. for the beautiful invocation which gives our statement of purpose today. Today has been made possible by the relentless, persistent, and dissatisfied work of so many leaders over so many years. Now, in recognition of their efforts, let me welcome to the stage for the unveiling of the statue of Chief Standing Bear, Chief Laramie Jr., Judy Gashkibos, Governor Peter Ricketts, Congressman Jeff Thorntonberry, Senator Deb Fischer, Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, and Senator Roy Blunt. There we go. There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Pete Ricketts, Governor of Nebraska.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here today. I want to say a special thanks to Chairman Wright and all of our tribal leaders who are here today. Especially we got Colonel Brewer, State Senator from Nebraska. Thank you, Colonel, and Executive Director of the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs, Judy Gashkabash. Thank you very much, Judy, for being here. As well as Speaker Pelosi, Senator Blunt, Leader Schumer, Leader McCarthy, and of course our Nebraska federal delegation, Senator Fischer, Congressman Thorntonberry, and I also see in the crowd we've got Senator Sass, Congressman, did not promote you yet, Congressman Smith, Congressman Bacon, and then of course all the people who made this possible, from the man who made this all possible through the nation, Don Campbell, Ben Victor, the sculptor, and everybody who made this day possible. And then of course I want to say thanks to all the folks in Lincoln who are watching today as well. It's an honor to be here today to recognize a Nebraska hero, and one of the most important civil rights leaders in our country that almost nobody knows about. And we hope to be able to correct that today and tell his story. In the 19th century, the Ponca were a peaceable tribe of hunters and farmers in northeast Nebraska. And then in 1877, the federal government decided to move them to Indian Territory in what is now Oklahoma. And so the Ponca had their own Trail of Tears, and many died, including the daughter of Chief Standing Bear, Prairie Flower. And then within 2 years of being in Oklahoma, Chief Standing Bear's son, Bear Shield, also died. And as Speaker Pelosi said, his dying wish is that he would be buried in his homeland. And so in the winter of 1879, Chief Standing Bear and some of his followers made the trek back to Nebraska to fill that wish. When they arrived in Nebraska, Chief Standing Bear was arrested for leaving the reservation without permission. But with the help of a sympathetic Army general, a journalist, and 2 attorneys who worked pro bono, he was able to sue the federal government for wrongful detention. Now, in that lawsuit, that case that lasted 2 days, that trial, the federal government's lawyers tried to make the argument that Chief Standing Bear was not a person or a citizen, and therefore had no grounds with which to make the case. And to confront that argument, Chief Standing Bear rose and addressed the judge. He stretched out his hand and said, "That hand is not the same color as yours, but if I pierce it, I shall feel pain. If you pierce your hand, you will also feel pain. The blood that will flow from my hand will be the same color as yours. I am a man. God made us both." And his compelling testimony led the judge to a landmark decision that said, indeed, Chief Standing Bear was a man. He was a person. And he had the same civil rights as anybody else in the United States. That reestablishment of the basic human dignity of Native Americans had happened in court, and that they too were entitled to equality under the law. As Nebraskans, we're very proud to be here today to recognize Chief Standing Bear for his dedication to his family, and to his tribe, and to that basic principle of the decency of humanity that we all share. And that he fought for that. And it's through his perseverance and courage that we are standing here today to be able to recognize his work and this landmark civil rights case. I hope more people will now understand the Chief Standing Bear story and why it is so important. And again, as Nebraskans, we're very proud to have this statue in Statuary Hall so prominently displayed, to have Chief Standing Bear represent Nebraska and our core principles of equality before the law. Thank you all again for being here today. God bless you all. God bless the great state of Nebraska, and God bless the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jeff Fortenberry, United States Representative from the 1st District of Nebraska.
Madam Speaker, esteemed colleagues, members of the Ponca tribe, all my friends from Nebraska, all those who are here to help us celebrate this wonderful unveiling, welcome to the United States Capitol. Let me also thank especially Chairman Larry Wright of the Ponca tribe and Judy Goshkabosh, who runs the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs, for their tireless efforts to see this day to completion, and all of you who have had a hand in making this happen today. We're all so excited and proud. The unveiling of a statue is a time-honored tradition. And we ask ourselves, why? Why? Because remembrance is a living thing. We reach back through remembrance and feel the past. We touch the nobility of another person's life, and we connect to the universal meaning of that person's sacrifice. And so today, we are overjoyed to welcome Chief Standing Bear to the United States Capitol and acknowledge his remarkable journey. We also say goodbye to Williams Jennings Bryan, a 3-time Democratic presidential candidate, Secretary of State, author of perhaps one of the most famous American speeches, The Cross of Gold, who served in this particular congressional district for 4 years, and whose house was a mile from where I live today in Lincoln, Nebraska. Williams Jennings Bryan was a voice for the common man crying in the prairie wilderness. Chief Standing Bear was an earlier American, a first American, crying in that same prairie wilderness. Yet few understood, perhaps until now. You see, friends, the gift of America is really this. We tether ourselves to what is permanent and noble and ideal. Just look around at this beautiful hall. And at the same time, we challenge ourselves to refresh, to change, and to become better. Chief Standing Bear's courage makes us all better. It is almost unthinkable to us today that it wasn't until 1879, after Standing Bear's trial, that Native Americans were declared to be persons for consideration of the law. Chief Standing Bear didn't seek to be a civil rights leader. He simply wanted to bury his dead son on their ancestral homeland. And in doing so, he called forth the essence of human dignity. And he changed the course of history in that transcendent moment when he raised his hand and said, "I am a man. God made us both." Yes, he did, great Ponca chief. Yes, he did. Welcome to the United States Capitol. Welcome all of you here today.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Deb Fisher, United States Senator from Nebraska.
Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm honored to join you today in dedicating this statue in memory of Chief Standing Bear. America needs to know his story. It is a story of a deep love for your homeland. It's a story of the denial of basic human rights and a historic trial that followed. And it's a story of a devoted father who, on a brutal journey to fulfill his promise to his dying son, changed America for the better. After leaving the Indian Territory to give his son the sacred burial he deserved, Chief Standing Bear was arrested and forced to prove that he was even a person. Eventually, the community heard his story and rallied for justice, resulting in that historic trial in the U.S. District Court in Omaha. After the lawyers heard the arguments, the judge granted Chief Standing Bearer the opportunity to speak. What followed was one of the greatest speeches in American history. Chief Standing Bearer echoed those same principles our founders ingrained in our blueprint for freedom, that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights. Days later, the judge ruled in favor of Chief Standing Bearer, and equal justice under law was extended to Native Americans. The House of Representatives met in this room that we are now in until 1857, and their deliberations were watched over by another statue, Cleo, the muse of history. She served as a constant reminder that their words and actions, the good and the bad, would be judged by time. Cleo was here watching, recording when in 1830 Congress shamefully passed the Indian Removal Act in this very room. If you look above the door leading into the rotunda, you'll see that she is still there documenting who we are now and where we are going. Today, she turns a new page as Chief Standing Bearer is welcomed into this cathedral of democracy and joins those who have shaped America's history. With the installation of this statue, he will inspire millions of people who visit this hallowed theater every year to learn the story of our nation's enduring commitment to equality, human freedom, and a more perfect union. It is a great honor to celebrate the life and the contributions of Chief Standing Bearer, a Nebraska treasure and an American hero. Thank you. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Larvey, Jr.
Adonai!
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Kevin McCarthy, Republican Leader of the United States House of Representatives.
I want to thank you. That was beautiful. What an amazing sculpture. The photo doesn't do it justice. And I'll be honest. Prior to knowing about today, I did not know the story. I will never think again of the change in America for human rights and civil rights. When I think of Martin Luther King, I also think of Chief Standing Bear. It is a story that will be told to millions. There's a lot of places to put a statue in this building, but I will tell you, this is the most prominent location. When the bells ring and the members walk and the tours are given, this is where they come. And they'll read the story of the governor so eloquently told. When I first read about the story and the language that he used, you can only imagine in the time, standing in a court, the fear he might have, but the courage he instilled just because of his son. That he spoke before the judge. And when he said those words, and I love the way Benjamin did this, he put his hand out, and you could picture that day. Hand is not the color of yours, but if I prick it, the blood will flow, and I shall feel pain. The blood is of the same color as yours. God made me, and I am a man. Chief Standing Bear was speaking of the language of America. He was not fighting for special privilege. Instead, he asked that he be afforded his rights as a human being, the same rights others enjoy. Whose words does that remind you of? Does it remind you of Martin Luther King? Does it remind you of Pericles? Because Pericles once said, "What you leave behind is what is not engraved in monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others." Clearly, Chief Standing Bear impacted the lives of many in our own time. But because of Benjamin Victor, he will also impact the lives of many in our time. Benjamin has not been introduced today, but Benjamin sits right over here. He is a special man. He's created, this is his third statue that sits in this hall. He was the youngest sculptor to ever have one, and he's the only living sculptor with the most. He has a unique ability to capture things that we only dream to imagine, to tell the story. Because as you walk through here, and as the tours are given, I promise you, you will stop here. Because you will look at that hand. you'll look at that face, you'll look at that skin tone and wonder, why does he sit in this hall? What is the story behind Chief Standing Bear? I think he reflected it greatly in the work you've done. The reason I know of Benjamin is because he grew up in Bakersfield, California, where I represent. He went to Foothill High School. He has the largest bronze statue that stands in America today, reflecting the men and women of the oil fields of the earliest 20th century. There was another famous thing that happened on this very day, on September 18th, 1793, 226 years ago today. You know what took place? They laid the cornerstone, George Washington did, for this very building. It was our founding fathers. And with this statue of Chief Standing Bear, we were building on their solid foundation. We definitely are forming a more perfect union. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Chuck Schumer, Democratic Leader of the United States Senate.
Thank you. In January of 1879, 2 years after men wielding bayonets forced the Ponca tribe to Oklahoma, Chief Standing Bear returned to his people's homeland in northern Nebraska with the body of his eldest son. Age 16, his son died from starvation or disease in the new Indian Territory. There, in Nebraska, after fulfilling his son's dying wish to be buried at home, Standing Bear was detained for leaving the land the government forced him to accept. Standing in court to defend his rights, Chief Standing Bear said, and it's been said before and will be said again, but can never be repeated enough, "My hand is not the same color as yours, but if I pierce it, I shall feel pain. I am a man. The same God made us both." And with the undeniable moral force of those plain-spoken words, he made history as the first Native American to secure recognition as a person in federal court. He spent much of his life thereafter traveling the country, advocating for Native Americans, dying in his ancestral home after years and years of persistent effort. Nearly 150 years later, our country still struggles to live out the full meaning of Chief Standing Bear's breakthrough. The legacy of forced relocations, broken promises, wrongful detainment, unfortunately endures. It is incumbent on all of us to recognize that fact and to make sure that Native Americans get nothing less than full justice under law. And it is my hope that by putting this statue here, every American who walks these halls will be reminded of our sometimes painful history and the injustice that still remains. Be reminded of the indelible marks that Native Americans have left on our nation and the justice they've wrought. And be reminded of the abiding truth that more powerful than the forces of race, faction, creed is the power of our common humanity. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Roy Blunt, Republican Policy Committee Chairman of the United States Senate.
Thank you all. One of my other jobs here, I chair a committee that's the Joint Committee on the Library, which doesn't sound like it would be a big deal, but it's the oldest joint committee in the Congress, and it's the committee assigned with the responsibility to protect our treasures. Senator Schumer and I have served on that committee together. Senator Fisher and I serve on that committee. And not too many months ago, I brought Senator Fisher over here and I said, here's the place that I think would be the best place for the Standing Bear statue. And she said, oh, you mean this place where every single person who walks into Statuary Hall looks at it and looks at it first? And I said, yeah, this place where everybody who walks in and walks into Statuary Hall sees it. And even at that moment, I don't know if Senator Fisher realized from what we had seen and the statue that we had frankly approved at several different times. Senator Schumer and I approved it once. I approved it another time as it was going through the process. I don't think we had an idea of the dominating character that this statue would reflect. And it does exactly that. You know, in 1864, the Congress decided it'd be a good idea to let the states put up to 2 statues from their state, chosen by their state in the Capitol. In 1937, Nebraska decided that William Jennings Bryan would be one of its 2 statues. In 2000, the Congress decided, you know, there's been enough history between 1864 and now, it might be a good idea to let the states have another shot at this. And so he passed a law that actually allowed the states, if they wanted to change their statute, and they did that through the state legislative process and went through the other processes that need to go through, that could happen. This is an important moment today. Congressman Fortenberry well described William Jennings Bryan, a 3-time nominee for president, the Secretary of State, but there are many statues here that tell a story similar to that. Maybe none exactly the same, but these stories are told in many ways. There aren't statues that tell more about all of who we are. You know, this is also a week where we recognize the Constitution, which was in September of 1787, was passed by the Constitutional Convention. 1789, the government's put in place. The Constitution started talking about we the people, but of course we now understand it didn't include all the people as it should. But it also went on to say to form a more perfect union. It didn't say to form a perfect union, it just said to form a more perfect union. Let's see if we can be better. We're still on that path. And I would suggest today is an important moment when we become a more perfect union, when we not only reflect more of who we are, but more of who we were. When we tell the stories of fights for freedom, when we tell the stories for fights for recognition, when we tell the stories of how we have increasingly come more together as a perfect union. We are not there yet. This is a moment that reflects an important part of how we became there. Standing Bear testified before committees of the Congress today in this great statue. That moment and the other moments of this incredible American life are recognized here in Statuary Hall.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Again, thank you all. Thank you, Senator Blunt, for sharing those words. It's a privilege to hear from leaders from all over our country, New York to Nebraska, California, and communities in the heartland, express what this day means to them and to their communities. I especially want to also acknowledge that as we unveil this beautiful statue, and thank you, Benjamin Victor, for this beautiful statue, and thank you, Mr. Laramie, for the beautiful singing of the Chief Standing Bear song today. But I also want to acknowledge that as we gather here in this beautiful statue in Statuary Hall, and welcome to the House side to our senators, I want to acknowledge for the first time in American history, we have 2 Native American women serving in the Congress of the United States. Congresswoman Sharice Davis and Congresswoman Deb Haaland. And wouldn't Chief Standing Bear just love to know that Deb Holland, as a freshman, is the chair of the Public Lands Committee of the Natural Resources Committee right from the start. And Sharice Davids is such an important leader in the Congress right from the start. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. Thank you for the courage to run. Thank you for being here today. The courageous story of Chief Standing Bear is one that resonates within all of us. You heard that again and again, rising above race, culture, geography, and politics. Chief embodies the values that we most cherish and which we have been most critical to forging progress in America: courage and conviction, dignity and resistance and resilience, and I would add persistence and resilience to that. Indeed, the story of America is written in the actions of men and women such as Chief Standing Bear, with a clear vision to see America as it should be, and the clarion voices to demand it. As Leader Schumer mentioned, we have to face the reality of what was if we're going to improve what comes next. Chief Standing Bear faced injustices beyond imagination, the injustice of being forced from his ancestral homeland to at bayonet point, the injustice of losing hundreds of members of his tribal family, including his son, Bear Shield, to starvation and suffering because the U.S. government's broken treaty promises, the injustice of detention and arrest for trying to take his son's body home when the same government refused to honor Native people's civil rights, including the right to expatriation. Yet Chief Standing Bear met those indignities with dignity and with honor, standing before the Omaha District Court, as we heard, and demanded God-given rights, saying, "I never committed any crime. If I had, I would not stand here to make a defense. I would suffer the punishment and make no complaint." We've heard today many times over the Chief's beautiful statement about his being a man, and that is engraved on the statue for all, on the base of the statue for all to see. Chief Standing Bear's decision to make his defense was an act of courage that transformed America, ensuring that Native Americans were finally considered persons within the meaning of the law. It seems hard for us to grasp the fact that that needed to be defined. Imagine that, one father's dignified defiance helping secure justice under the law for an entire people for generations to come. That process of securing justice remains an ongoing journey, one that we all have a responsibility to carry forth. And I want to salute the people of Nebraska. Thank you, Governor. Thank you to the legislature of Nebraska for the decision that you made, with stiff competition for many, I'm sure, who competed for the honor. But you have brought such honor and dignity to the capital of the United States. Thank you, Nebraska. Thank you, Governor, for that. And that is an applause line. Now with this statue, we enshrine in bronze our promise to build the better, more just future of which Chief Standing Bear dreamed. And we display that promise proudly in the U.S. Capitol so that thousands of people, whenever anyone comes through here, as Leader McCarthy mentioned, everyone who comes through here will see the statue and learn the story and be inspired and be challenged. From every part of the world, people can bear witness to it. From all over America, people can see it every day for generations, perhaps 7 generations at least to come. Thank you all for making this day so special for the Congress, more importantly, for the United States of America. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as the Honorable Tom Brewer, State Senator of the Nebraska Unicameral Legislature, delivers the benediction.
Please join me in a benediction. Great Spirit, we come before you today and we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity in this building to recognize a great leader. We thank you for the leadership that made this possible. We ask, Lord, that you are the author of justice. It pleases you when we reflect your perfect love by loving one another, by showing mercy, and by doing no evil to our neighbors. We would ask a special blessing today on Native American peoples, especially the Ponca and the family of Chief Standing Bearer. We thank you for Chief Standing Bearer's unwavering courage to speak the truth, to proclaim that Native people are recognized as people, that we have God-given rights that man's law must respect. God, we thank you that all things work together for good in your holy plan. We ask that you spur us to good works, to respect our neighbors, to serve them in love. We ask for your wisdom to discern right from wrong. We ask that you make our hearts sensitive to your unchanging law. We ask that you strengthen us in your unresolved will to do justice. And we ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain at your seats for the departure of the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, for those wishing to take a closer look at the statue, please refrain from approaching the statue until the architect's office has deconstructed the stage and made a clear path for statue viewing. At that time, please follow the directions of the Visitors Services staff. Thank you.